Good morning, everybody, and good evening for those in New Zealand. Welcome to the show. It's another episode of Loving the Game. And today I've got a guest from all the way from New Zealand. That's why I obviously greeted everybody there. None other than a gentleman called whose name is Mark, but is more known to everybody as 2 Cents Rugby. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Like you said, it's evening over here, so I finished my day at work, and kids are in bed. Things are peaceful and happy.
That's great. Tell me, Mark, what have you been up to, and who is Mark basically besides Two
What
Cents
have I
Rugby?
been up to? Yeah, true. Well, like everywhere else, we've been in lockdown, so I'm fortunate enough to have a an office job that basically I can do from home. I work at the local university here in Auckland, so yeah, I've still been working. The tough part about that for me is I guess I got two kids, one's 4 and one's 2.
Oh wow.
So having them around the house while trying to do meetings like this, is testing at the best of times. But my wife's been home as well, so we're kind of able to tag team the kids. So we'll look at each other's daily plan. She's got a meeting at 10, I've got a meeting at 12. We'll tag team the kids, so one of us has got them down the other end of the house. So yeah, been getting by that way.
And tell me, Mark, where are you based in New Zealand?
I'm based in Auckland, so Auckland born and raised. So I'm a blues man. Didn't have a choice about that. When I was a young fella, we had a very strong rugby team, pre-Super Rugby and early Super Rugby, and then the wheels kind of came off a bit. But yeah, I've never lived anywhere else in New Zealand, so I've got to kind of stick to my roots. Don't have a choice.
Yeah. No, it's very evident you're a Blues supporter looking at your setup there. Listen, Mark.
I was tempted. I was tempted to put on some Bulls gear for you, but I thought, no, I'll stick
Oh,
with the
geez,
Blues.
you would have made my day. You would have made my day. But I mean, Blues is close enough, and I'll just consider that, as a consolation. I mean, thanks so much for the thought, though. I must say, going through your social media and stuff, it's been actually quite interesting seeing pictures with you in a Springbok jersey pop up every now and again, and I think we'll definitely touch on that because I mean, getting into the whole 2 Cents Rugby, I think is gonna tell us a lot about you and what you do and all that stuff. Besides obviously your daily job. But to start things off, I mean, where you just briefly mentioned now you were born and raised in Auckland, and I mean back in the days when Auckland was obviously a force. I mean, I remember back, when Super Rugby, it was called what, Super 6 or Super 10 back in the day, and I mean they were basically like the Crusaders of today, if I can compare it like that. I mean that the Auckland, they weren't called the Auckland Blues back then, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it was just Auckland
just
from memory,
Auckland,
but
yes,
I could
that's
be
right. I
mistaken.
mean,
Yeah.
and they were loaded with All Blacks. I mean, Sean Fitzpatrick just named them in the All Black captain at that stage. That was obviously when I got familiar with them. But where did the bug actually bite? It's probably not the best question asking a New Zealander that.
Yeah, I think I probably got that from my dad. He is, I mean, I guess kind of like you. He's a bit of a sports nut. He follows. I mean, rugby is his number one game. He'll follow
Yeah,
rugby league. He'll watch the cricket. He's the sport was just always on. Like growing up, my dad was either on the couch, beer in hand, watching the sport, or he was out in the front yard chucking a ball around with us.
yeah,
Or if my mum really wanted some peace and quiet, he was taking us to the game, taking us to Eden Park, to watch the boys live. So yeah, I think definitely it's from my dad. He's probably mellowed a little bit since I don't know, 55, 60 years old. I think he's not quite as crazy as he used to be, but I mean, he was definitely like, I remember once on my birthday, I think I wanted to go somewhere, and he said, "No, there's a Blues game on that day. Like we'll go to the Blues game. We'll do your birthday thing the day after or something." So, yeah, that kind of gives you an indication of where it is. I think I kind of went sometimes a bit away from him because it's your old man. Sometimes you want to do your own thing.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, rugby league was also professional a lot earlier than rugby union. So, when you're 10 years old, the marketing of league, all the merchandise and all that stuff is very appealing. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm a Kiwi, so rugby union is where it's at if you're going to follow a sport for most of us.
Yeah, that's true. And players that stood out for you in your, in your early days of, when you now finally got into the rugby union thing and you became a staunch supporter, I mean, I know you love your rugby, especially today. But I mean, who were players that you admired as a youngster?
I still remember Grant Fox, former All Blacks and Auckland Fly
Yeah,
half. He
yeah,
visited our school, which was something they used to do. I'm not sure if they still do it now. I'm not sure what the community engagement is like nowadays, but it certainly used to be a really good thing back when I was a kid. So Grant Fox came to our school. I think Michael Jones came to our school. So
no,
yeah, just seeing guys like that in the flesh. Back when I was a kid, you used to be able to run onto the pitch after the game.
yes,
And I've got an older brother, and he was a keen autograph hunter. So, we would always try and track down those big names, like you mentioned, Sean Fitzpatrick. The one he could never get was Zinzan Brook. That
oh wow,
guy, when at the end of the game, he wanted nothing to do with the kids. He was gone. He was bolting. So my brother still kind of holds that against him. But yeah, those are some of the guys that definitely left kind of positive vibes on me as a kid. The fact that you could see them after the game, you could get within touching distance of them, come to your school, and then you see them on the field. And plus, there was a pretty winning team that I was watching. So to see them as kind of champions, or at least pretty
yeah.
consistent winners.
And I mean, nowadays, I mean, the Blues, I mean, obviously they're not as good as they used to be. And I mean, going through patches and stuff. And I must say this current Super Rugby setup that they're talking about, that you guys are going to, be launching soon. The prospects are looking good with Bowden Barrett and all those oaks, coming back. But one thing that I've noticed, with Super Rugby over the last few seasons is like you mentioned back in the day, you could go onto the field after the match. There was no issue at all. And obviously, with safety and stuff, things have changed a bit. But one thing that's very evident, when we watch the games here in South Africa, is how the players actually go to the fans afterwards, which is really amazing. And it's slowly starting to happen here in South Africa, because I think the guys have picked up on the trend. Not that it's a trend. I think it's just a great gesture from the players to mingle with the fans afterwards. How do you see that? I mean, is it actually, how do the kids respond to that?
I think it's important. I mean, when you're a kid, I mean, I remember going to the games as a kid. I highly doubt I sat there and watched the game for 80 minutes. I
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
wanted to run around and find the other kids and just, mess about and go buy some food, get some hot chips with my dad. And then, but actually, I think those moments as a quite a young kid, when you get to see those guys, that's maybe even going to leave more an impression on you than the game itself.
the game
You get to
itself.
see
Yeah.
them. Maybe they shake your hand. Maybe they sign something for you.
And
Have a few
nowadays,
words with you.
selfies.
Yeah, selfies, of course. That's definitely one everyone's
I mean,
gotten used to.
back in the day when we were small, a selfie wasn't even a thought.
No,
I mean, just to like you just mentioned now. I mean, as a kid, you're probably not worried about the game, but that one moment or that experience to stand next to or have or get an autograph from a big name player or just a rugby player that's playing for the team that you support was massive. And nowadays, I mean, you can take a selfie with a guy and go home and say, "Geez, look, yeah, I mean, I had a picture with, with X or whatever." So yeah, it's really great. And I must say, like I said, I mean, I admire the fact that your players actually do that, and I know the Australians also do it. And it's now I've started noticing it at some of the South African games as well, which is really, really great, because I think at the end of the day, the players need the fans. And it just does, especially for the kids. It's like the forming phase of your rugby, future. Basically, getting to meet those oaks up front. Um, have you? I mean, I know you said you basically live in Auckland and you've never lived anywhere else, but I'm sure you've travelled in New Zealand and you've gotten to watch, other games, whether it be Super Rugby. Maybe I'm sure, hopefully, you've squeezed in a few tests in your life around the country. Which and I'm not sure if you've travelled abroad, but I mean, any venues that stick out to you that you've been to that you actually enjoy?
Yeah, I haven't lived anywhere else in New Zealand. I did live in China for about 7 years, and
Oh
rugby
wow,
there is pretty much non-existent. So,
yeah,
yeah, it was nice to get back here and be able to get a bit of rugby back in. I mean, the main venue I've been to is, of course, Eden Park. That's my local. It's been nice to travel around a bit. Like it's kind of been a good thing for my wife and I that we she may not agree with it, but at least when we do the travel, I'll see if
yeah,
there's a rugby fixture on. So if I can catch a game while we're
yeah,
there, then it's kind of like a double reason to go. We can go see the game and we can do X, Y, and Z while we're there. So of the Super Rugby stadiums in New Zealand, I've been to the first one I went to was the one down in Dunedin where the Highlanders play because they put on the roof. It's a new stadium. I was very keen to go and see that because Eden Park, although it's our famous ground, we've got a great record there. It's she's an old stadium.
yeah.
It's not modern. The wind can pick up. You don't get any sunlight in some of the areas. It gets pretty brisk. The parking's terrible. So there's
Oh really?
you can't park at Eden Park. There's no parking at the ground, and they close off all of the streets around Eden Park to you can't do like side street parking. They put up signs saying if you park here, you're going to get towed away because the residents there get because it's in a suburban neighborhood. They get frustrated with all the rugby fans, especially after the game, maybe having a few beers, maybe making a bit too much noise and whatnot. So yeah, you've got to park quite far away and then walk, or you've got to take the train.
Yes.
So yeah, it was nice to go down and see the one in Dunedin. It's modern, like I said. It's covered, so you don't have to worry about the weather so much. So that was a cool experience. Even though when I saw the Blues there, they lost that game back in John Kerwin's day. I went to the one down in Wellington, the Cake Tin.
Yeah.
I went there. I went there last year to see the Bulls in their quarterfinal against
Oh
the
wow.
Hurricanes. Yeah.
Oh, that was a great game.
That was a great game, and I decided, the hell with it. If I wait to see a Blues playoff game, I could be waiting a very, very long time. So I'm just going to go see two teams. That neither of them's my team, but I'm just going to go watch. Unfortunately, it was a really good game. So it was interesting when I heard your conversation with Brendan Nell yesterday. He talked about having to walk around that stadium.
Yeah.
That is quite a unique thing. You really do literally have to walk virtually around the whole stadium to get to your seat, depending on where you're sitting. So that one was a good one. But I think my favorite is probably the Chiefs ground down in Hamilton. I've been to a couple of games there because that game it's made for rugby. Like it's a rectangle, and if you're sitting in the front row and if you yell at a player, he is going to hear you. You are that close to the game.
Really?
Like the Cake Tin in Wellington, it's an oval, so even if you're at the sideline, you're still quite far away.
Yes.
Yeah, but the one in Hamilton, you are right at the action. Like you could spit on them if you had a good enough technique on you. Like you're that close to the game. So yeah, when those guys are tackling and whatnot, it's brutal. So it's almost like being at a club rugby game. You can get that close.
Oh, that's awesome. And any stadium that you'd like to, if you had the opportunity to go anywhere in the world and watch a game, where would it be?
I think maybe because it's not going to be used anymore, but Newlands, right? They're gonna move the Stormers. That's going to be one of my kind of big regrets, I guess, is that I'm not going to get to see a game at Newlands, because when that place is packed out, it really looks, it looks like quite a spectacle. But I mean, all the grounds in South Africa are pretty big. Like Loftus, when I was a kid, just like hearing the name Loftus was almost like some kind of dark magic, because when we used to go on our tours there, you knew if they said Loftus, like anywhere altitude, you knew like probably not going to end well for the All Blacks. So yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to go to some of those grounds in South Africa, proper big rugby grounds for a test match. I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I must say I was reading something the other day, and it struck home a bit. Like you just mentioned now, altitude and all that stuff with Loftus. And but funny enough, the All Blacks actually have a bloody good record at Loftus. It's Ellis Park, which is just down the road. Also,
Right.
where the All Blacks tend to suffer. But I must say, yes, it would be actually, like I say, I was reading an article the other day, and it would be so cool if we can just beat the All Blacks, once at Loftus, because yeah, that is such a. Obviously being a Bulls fan, I enjoy that stadium, but Ellis Park stands out a lot. I was fortunate enough to go to Newlands about 5 years ago, which was like a childhood dream of mine, even being a Bulls supporter. But it's like just Newlands for South African, it's almost like the home of rugby kind of thing. And obviously for me, I'd like to go to Twickenham one day, just to also like one of those venues where, with the English supporters, if they get into song and stuff. And I know quite a few guys that I've spoken to quite keen to go to the Millennium Stadium. Apparently, the Welsh supporters are just like next level. When they get into song and voice, then it's like the most unbelievable experience. It's
From
not
what
even
I've
about
heard, nobody sings their anthem like the Welsh. Like they fully, they're fully like a nation of just natural born singers. So yeah, you're right. In terms of going to a stadium up north, I think that one would be magic as well. Is it true people do a braai outside the stadium sometimes in South Africa?
Yeah, some of the stadiums allow that. Kings Park, where the Sharks play, they've got a great vibe on there, what they would call their B fields or whatever, which is basically right next door to the stadium. So there's usually, I know it has changed apparently in the last few years, but I remember growing up, I grew up most of my life in Natal actually. Even though I was born in Pretoria, just for those watching wondering why the hell am I supporting the Bulls. But that's probably the best venue in South Africa when it comes to pre-match, even post-match. And I was fortunate enough to watch the 95 semi-final at Kings Park. And I tell you what, that was the most unbelievable experience besides the game, just the pre-game and post-game. Just something interesting after that match. I'm sure you remember it was that game. There was a lot of rain in that match. And when we left the stadium after the match, we went to the B field to celebrate a bit and stuff. I was about 18 years old at that stage. And we were literally almost knee-deep in the mud and water. That's how much water there was. But it didn't stop anybody from having a few toots afterwards and just, you couldn't not celebrate. The weather wasn't even a factor. But yeah. Tell me, I'm not going to ask you. I normally ask the guys about their memorabilia and stuff, but anybody that follows you and watches your YouTube videos and stuff, which is basically how I somehow stumbled upon you one day, and I've watched a lot of your videos. But something that's very, very interesting and evident, and it's probably which is your trademark, if I can call it that, is that I'm going to use your previews because you do a lot of stuff. But your previews, when you do a preview on a, let's say, on a Super Rugby match, you'll, for instance, wear a cap of the one team and a jersey of the other. And as time went on, I'm not sure how long you've had your YouTube channel now, but it's been a while. You've been fortunate enough where teams, and I don't know if it's just sometimes random people, but they've sent you jerseys of teams from across the world. I actually saw the other day, I can't remember if it was on Facebook or on Twitter, you actually posted a picture of all your jerseys, which is ridiculous. I actually, how many have you got to start things off?
I think it's about 87. I tried to do a count that day because somebody, just during lockdown, somebody sent me a tweet. So yeah, it was on Twitter, and they were tweeting like either retired rugby players or current rugby players to do some kind of the hashtag was like show us your jersey or something like that, show us your collection. So someone forwarded that to me saying, hey, I know you've got a lot of jerseys, why don't you do that? And I thought, okay, yeah, well, I never do that. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of a pain in the backside to take them all out and hang them all up. But I was like, why don't I do it? It was lockdown, sunny day. So yeah, it was a good reason to get them all out and actually go through them. It was in the 80s, I think. Yeah,
Wow.
but you're right. A lot of them have been sent to me. The first one that actually got sent to me by a subscriber was a Springboks jersey, believe it or not. I was in China at the time, and I was still doing my YouTube thing, and I hit some milestone, maybe like 1,000 subscribers or 500 subscribers. It was still pretty early on. And to celebrate, I bought a Lions jersey, and I had it shipped to me online. And I showed the jersey off on channel. Hey, I just bought this as a celebration. And this guy emailed me, this guy Willem, and he said, "Hey man, that's so cool that you bought a Lions jersey, that you want to wear the jerseys of other teams. Like, I'm gonna send you a Springboks jersey." So he sent me a Springboks jersey, and then it seems like that just kind of caught on. Other people were like, "Yeah, that's great. I want you to wear my team's jersey. I'm gonna send you my jersey." So. Yeah, it just kind of snowballed. So I've been unbelievably lucky and blessed to get so many different teams' jerseys. But yeah, I do like the fact that when a team, really puts in a good effort, even if it's against my Blues, I will, put on the jersey and talk them up and say the good plays they did and great matches they had. And so it's a cool thing.
So my first question is, where do you keep those jerseys?
In the room next to my bedroom, there's basically a clothes rack, and it's just one long metal bar, and they're all lined up there. So I do watch them from time to time. The wife, it's funny as well, because when I first wanted to start the channel, I said to my wife, I want to start a YouTube channel, and she's like. Okay, like a wacky idea, right? Like, okay, I want to talk rugby. I want to start a YouTube channel. I think I've had, other ideas before. Like, I want to do this, and it's always rolling her eyes. Like, of course you do. So I was like, I want to start a YouTube channel. I want to buy two things. I want to buy a whiteboard so I can have it in the background.
Yes.
And write things on it. And I want to buy a Sharks jersey because I wanted to at least have one team that's not my team, so I can kind of at least be a little bit neutral on some of the stuff. And she kind of looked at me like, you're wasting money here, man. And I kind of sold it to her by like, look, if nothing happens with this channel, at least we can get the kids to write on the whiteboard. That's like a good game for them. And if it's, I've still got a Sharks jersey, I can just wear it like a t-shirt, right? It doesn't matter. So she kind of bought into it. And then, even now she's, it just skyrocketed. So, so she doesn't mind too much the fact that she's got that many jerseys to look at in the other room, but certainly when she wants to buy some clothes, there's not much I can say, right?
I guess you just like, okay, that's I wanted to ask you something else, and how do you decide on, let's say, when you're doing a preview, that you're going to be wearing the jersey or the cap? What determines the jersey or the cap?
I don't have a set formula anymore. Nowadays, I try to wear the same jersey and cap, but back in the old days, I tended to mix and match, just depending on if I had that team's jersey or not. Like now for Super Rugby, I've got all the teams, so I can just comfortably wear whatever. But back in the early days, I only had a handful of the teams. But my dad is a massive hat collector. He's got like 200 hats. Everywhere he goes, he buys a hat. If he travels to Brisbane, he comes back with a hat that says, I visited Brisbane. If he goes, anywhere, any little town, he's going to buy a hat. But that also meant he collected loads of rugby hats. So when I started my YouTube channel, I said, Dad, I want these hats. So I always had more hats than I had jerseys. So that was probably the deal with the mixing and matching early on.
Okay.
And then, nowadays I tend to go with either it's a team that I haven't worn a jersey for a while, or if it's a team which is on a big losing run, maybe I want to wear their jersey and say, come on, guys, this is your week to get a result. Or if there's any particular theme, like a player that's coming back from injury, maybe I want to put the jersey on to mention that. So usually if there's some kind of some kind of theme going on with that team, I'll try to put their jersey on. And if it's an underdog sometimes as well, like if it's Italy in the Six Nations, I'll probably put their jersey on in the preview, because I usually wear a winner's jersey in the review, and it's probably not going to happen with like that.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. You don't have any like superstitions regarding, thinking, geez, every time I've worn this jersey, this team has lost, or every time I wear this jersey, this team has won?
I try not to get too superstitious about things, because I know my mom is big on her superstitions. Like she's a rugby fan, but only to the point that she watches the All Blacks and she watches the Blues. Like that's about it. She's not going to watch other teams play. She's not really that fussed.
Yeah.
But she's the kind of person who'll tell me, if I don't watch the Blues, that's when they win. So I try not to get too superstitious about that kind of thing. Yeah.
So you brought up the whiteboard, and I remember watching, I don't know if it was an interview you did with someone or if it was just on your own channel, where you actually explained the whole concept behind the whiteboard thing. I've heard it, but if you don't mind, just telling people about that whole story, because that was actually part of the whole concept behind what you did, which derived from another similar kind of thing, but obviously not to do with rugby. But let me tell you, if you can just share that story, just to give people an idea of how your 2 cents came about.
Sure. So it started when my wife had our son in the end of 2015 in December, and the university I work for is good enough to give any new parent a couple of months off to do parental leave. So it's not many places do that here. So I was pretty lucky. So when my son was like 3 months old, my wife went back to work, and I was looking after my son. So I'm dad at home alone with a little baby, struggling at times. But the good thing is with a 3-month-old is they sleep quite a lot most of the time.
Yeah.
And daytime TV is generally not very good. But what was on TV a lot during the day, guys, because the time zone differences, was ice hockey, the NHL. So there was just NHL games on every day. So I would just sit here every day watching NHL, and it was the playoffs as well. So it's quite interesting, but it takes a long time because they have 7-game series to decide each round. So there's hundreds of games. It's not like us with just the 1 game a week. They play like almost every other day. So I was watching that, and there's no ice hockey coverage here in New Zealand. It's not a game which gets talked about at all. So I was just on YouTube, and there was this Canadian guy. He had a whiteboard, and he would just talk about the games. And it was nice for me, because I didn't really understand the game very well, to have this guy talking about the games, talking about the players, and you're able to read the comments on the channel, and slowly just kind of got into the game. And somehow that just kind of sunk into my mind that I could do that for rugby. It's a good concept. Like there's the mainstream news stuff, but I know a lot of countries don't get it, because there's not many countries like ice hockey, I guess, where it's the number 1 game. Like for them, it's Canada. That's their game. For rugby, there's not many countries where it is the sport. A lot of the times it's a secondary, maybe a 3rd-tier sport. So I thought there's room for it. So that's where I asked my wife. I need a whiteboard and I need a Sharks jersey. The Sharks jersey, because the Sharks were kind of always my second team in South Africa, because I've got a thing about seeing teams win a final, and the Sharks just got so damn close, but couldn't win a final. So and still not. But and it's black. I've got an affinity to black jerseys, right? So I wanted a Sharks jersey, and there was a second-hand one relatively cheap online. So that was the reason for.
I was wondering where the Sharks kind of fit into the picture, and I see someone sent a question. Just while we're on the whole, the YouTube thing, has it ever become overbearing running a channel, developing content, editing? I started this thing and I can vouch. But how have you experienced that?
Well, I kind of modeled it initially off what that ice hockey guy does. And his main premise is he previews the games that are coming up and he reviews the games that have been played. So that's okay for him because there's games literally every day. Like I said, they can play every day or every other day. For rugby, it's not quite that simple because the guys, it's a physical sport. They need time, to let their bodies recover. So you're looking at once a week at the max. But his channel was pretty simple in that it's a whiteboard. He doesn't use any graphics. You record it and then the editing is done. He also did it in one take. He's able to speak for 20 minutes without any cuts, any edits. And I figured, I used to be a teacher. That's what I did in China. I was teaching English. So, speaking in front of a group of people was, it's something I had a bit of practice at. So, yeah, I guess that aspect of it, the editing, I very rarely edit videos myself. It's a big pain. I did have a South African guy who volunteered, again, a very generous. South Africans have been very generous to me, man, sending me a Springboks jersey. And this guy volunteered to edit my videos for me. So a few of my videos have got kind of fancy editing, but that was never done by me if it's fancy. So yeah, that aspect of it is pretty low maintenance. Essentially, I just record the video and upload it. Coming up with content is generally not too hard because I just want to talk about everything. I want to talk about the jerseys. I want to talk about the players. I want to talk about the stats. So I've never found it too much of a problem. It just means it's kind of taken up my free time. So instead of playing video games or instead of, just watching The Walking Dead or something, I'm just watching rugby stuff. So it's, I don't think it's like, I still kept the core stuff, I still go to my day job and I still look after my kids and do the family time. So it just means my hobby time has essentially become rugby time.
Yeah, I understand. No, I must vouch. I think if you just stick to a specific formula and you don't want to take over the world, then keep it simple, basically. And like some people would say, less is more. So, don't try and take over the world, by doing everything about rugby. And I think what you do is actually pretty good. I mean, that's what people want to hear, and you get to the point. And I mean, like you say, you at least you're comfortable speaking, which helps a lot as well. And I think sometimes you don't need the editing and stuff, but I mean it does make things nice. But at the end of the day, it's you just want to get a point over. And I mean, what is your subscribers at this stage?
It's 23,000 something, which is
wow.
I mean, it's remarkable. I think I started in January 2018. So yeah. But it's definitely been, I mean, the start, I guess, of any YouTube channel is pretty slow going because you're new, people aren't sure about you. But then the more you produce, the longer you stick at it, then you get a kind of regular crowd. Then you get the banter going on in the comments, which is I think half of what the people like about my stuff is probably reading the comments of the other people's opinions, because I say what I'm thinking, but other people might disagree with me, and then they get little debates going on in the comments. So it's essentially just like your online mates instead of your mates at the pub. So
and I think that's where my idea kind of came from, is based on people that I got to know on Twitter mainly. And I thought, there's some guys out there that actually know what they're talking about when it comes to rugby and stuff. But besides that, I mean, how did they fall in love? Hence the term loving the game. And that's why I kind of thought during lockdown, because under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have the amount of time that I've got now. And then I just thought, yes, I need to do something besides washing dishes and washing clothes the whole time. I need to get something, and obviously helping out with some homeschooling a bit. Thankfully, my wife, is a bit of a teacher. So, well, not a bit. She does teaching. So it helps a lot in that regard. But, that's how, I just thought I want to get to know these people on a different level besides Twitter. So, yeah. Tell us about your biggest, your most memorable moment as a rugby supporter.
I think I went to the opening game of the 2011 World Cup. That was a magic one. I was living in China at that time. I switched jobs, and when I applied for that job, I told my employer before I signed the contract look, I need to go back to New Zealand during this time. I didn't stay for the
Yeah,
whole tournament. I just stayed for most of the pool stages. I was like, I've never been to a World Cup before. 87, I was still only a little fella, so I didn't get to see any games. Uh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to Japan, but I knew New Zealand. I don't even know if Japan was announced at the time, but I knew 2011. That's the time. It's local. You've got to go.
yeah.
So yeah, I made sure I was back in New Zealand. I got a pool pass, which meant I got several all the games at Eden Park, basically, I think, in the pool stages. So yeah, but that first game, had the opening ceremony. They did a haka, a big Māori performance. It was just spine tingling, like almost better than the game. Like the game itself was New Zealand against Tonga.
Yeah.
And because I had, I think they had 4 categories of ticket, A, B, C, and D. I had a C. So I was kind of towards one end. And it was one of those games where most of the tries are scored down that end. And you're hoping that for the second half, it'll come down your end, but it still stays down that end. It was kind of one of those.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
kind of one of those games, but just the atmosphere in that game, everyone was pumped up. New Zealand fans can be pretty quiet. Like we're not like the Europeans who sing songs, or the South
Okay.
Americans. We don't have that. We kind of maybe we'll do the odd chant, we'll clap, but people were talking to each other. The people behind you would tap you on the shoulders, and it was just such a great vibe that day. And then I also saw the pool stage game in that World Cup against France. So obviously we played them in the final as well. But the pool stage game, which was I think a bit more one-sided,
Yeah.
that gave me an insight into like the French, like just the passion of those fans. There were
Yes.
guys sitting at the other side of the field, and it just looked like it looked like an earthquake in the stand because they were just all bouncing up and down in unison. And as a Kiwi, like where we just sit there and kind of politely clap, it was just such a sight to behold. It was just really, really great vibe.
Yeah. And your least memorable moment, something that when you think about it, it still hurts.
I watched the '95 final live when I was a kid. I mean, I would have been like 12 maybe, so I don't really have that clear memory of it. I just remember my parents allowed me to get out of bed, to go into their bedroom where they had a TV, lie in bed with them and watch the game. And it went on for a long time, obviously.
Yes.
And then just as a kid, like, your team are the heroes and you're so sure that the good guys, obviously you think your own team is the good guys. You're so sure they're going to win.
Yeah.
And Andrew Mertens is taking these shots at drop goals and he just keeps missing. You're so sure that next one is going to be the one, and then it just doesn't happen. That was I went back and rewatched it a couple of weeks ago, and it still kind of burns. Like New Zealand, on rewatching it, didn't deserve to win the game. The Box were the better team. Like I watched it as an adult, which was a fresh experience, but
Yes.
yeah, it was still kind of fresh all these years later.
Yeah. Tell me, this was, I mean, now that you're mentioning that game, and you obviously when you were a kid, you wouldn't have taken note of a lot of things during that match. But I mean, now you watched it recently, and what was your thoughts on the much talked about Ruben Kruger try? Was it a try or not? What would you have said?
I generally go with the philosophy that the benefit of the doubt should go to the attacking team.
Yeah.
Like that's the nature of the game. So I would have thought there's like a little bit of that ball would have been touching some of the whitewash. So
Yeah.
I would have thought so.
I just thought it out of interest because you get a lot of guys that still harp on about it. I mean, I'm not too. I mean, we won the game at the end of the day, but it's just interesting how how settings. And I mean, back in the day, you didn't have stuff like TMOs and match television reviews and that kind of thing that we're so used to today. And it's interesting. Imagine recreating that game with and having a TMO actually sit in. It's actually something the broadcasters should consider during a time like lockdown. I mean, this is the perfect time to do something like that. Maybe cut the commentary, original commentary, and redo the commentary, and maybe have a referee on mic and say this is how I would have called it or whatever. Not to take anything away from the original ref. I mean, you obviously saw that interview. Well, I don't know if you saw the actual interview I did with Cobus Visa, also relating to that final with I almost said John Eels. I don't know why I always mix the two up. Ian Jones.
Ian Jones.
Branding that. Well, now it seems to be, everybody knows about it now, but nobody knew about it then. Yeah, that was quite interesting actually discovering that moment, and it would be interesting getting to Ian Jones's thoughts. I mean, have you ever thought of at one stage maybe starting to do interviews with players or anybody, or do you just want to stick to what you do?
Yeah, I don't know. It's you feel like almost a bit of a fraud. I don't know, at least for me anyway, on YouTube. Like I feel like I'm just a guy who likes to talk with his mates basically online and have a beer and have a chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would be certainly nice to. Like I was supposed to go to one of the, because I was a Blues season ticket holder. They had like an end of year like function. And I was supposed to go to, the end of year function where you have dinner and you can meet the players and whatnot. And one of my kids ended up getting sick, so I didn't get up. Like I was all prepared to take a little microphone and take a camera and actually kind of try to be semi-professional about it. But my dad ended up going, and he's again the rugby nut, so he ended up bothering all the players throughout the night by getting photos with them and whatnot. But it would be nice to talk to Ian Jones about it, because generally that guy, at least since he's been doing his punditry stuff over here, he's really soft-spoken, he's well-mannered, so it's such a contrast to see that moment, you know what I mean? So yeah, it would be interesting to see his recollection. Obviously, heat of the moment, you've just lost the Rugby World Cup final, so people do crazy things.
No, I agree. I think if the shoe was on the other foot, it would have been probably the same. I mean, it's a World Cup final. I mean, it's a bitter pill to swallow, especially the way that game had gone as well. I mean, it went, like you mentioned, extra time and all that stuff. But on that point of, having an opportunity to maybe chat to someone, if you could chat to anybody and you were only allowed to ask them one question, who would it be and what?
Wow. Are we talking alive or dead, or
you can pick anybody? I'll allow you to say. I mean, anybody that's dead as well, because I mean, New Zealand's got such a rugby history.
There's one thing that I kind of would like clarification on, and it's nothing like earth-shattering. It's just my GP, my doctor, when I was a child. Because I was getting quite tall. Like I'm 6'4", so I'm a pretty tall guy.
Oh.
My doctor was talking to me about my growth as a child, and he mentioned that Jonah Lomu was also a patient of his for a while when he was like growing up. But that's when Jonah was like at the peak of his fame. So I really don't know if my doctor was just talking out his backside or if he was really like legit. I would love to know from Jonah just who his doctor was when he was a teenager, to see if there's actually any truth in that. Because my doctor mentioned there's like a mark on the wall. He said this mark is, I measured Jonah and I put this mark on the wall because he said something about like Jonah came back to see him when he was starting to get his kidney problems because he trusted him, from his growing up in his childhood. So I would love to know whether that's true or whether that's a load of rubbish. But I mean, that's a pretty specific question. It's nothing earth-shattering, but yeah, I'm very curious to know if my doctor was just fooling me a story of hot air or not.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting story. I mean, Mark, any rugby wish you have? I mean, besides maybe the Blues getting better and winning Super Rugby again one day, is there anything in rugby terms that you quite have a wish of, that you'd love to, whatever that wish might be?
Super Rugby is not quite a healthy state, is it? The attendances, I did a video on that the other day. The attendances are down. I don't think, there seems to be a bit of a narrative that it's definitely a dead competition. With this whole pandemic and restrictions on travel, who really knows? But it would be nice to get the game back to. I mean, I kind of sound like an old man when I say I get it back to what it used to be. I'm not sure what it's like in South Africa at the moment. Like I know certainly in my workspace, there's not many kind of rugby guys or girls in my office. So, I mean, there's a fair few people who are born overseas and moved to New Zealand. So maybe, rugby is a game that often, if you don't grow up with it, you don't get into it. There's obviously exceptions, but it's got a higher entry kind of learning curve than some other games. So, yeah, it'd be nice to see Eden Park full with not just, All Blacks games. It'd be nice to see it. And not just Eden Park, Loftus and, the Australian grounds. Just it'd be nice to see more bums on seats at the games and to get people really talking about the game, not just at the international level, because international level seems to do, for the most part, pretty well. But the Super Rugby level seems to have been devalued a bit over the years. So it'd be nice to see them finally get that right. They keep tinkering with it. They keep making changes. I'm not sure if it's so many changes so quickly just, puts people off, but there's so many other options for people nowadays. You don't have to be into sports, but yeah, it'd certainly make for a better atmosphere when I go to a Blues game to see more people around me.
Yeah, and tell me this this competition that's coming up for you guys. I must be honest, I haven't been reading up too much about it. I think the fact of the matter is everybody's just glad that there might be rugby around the corner. Do you think we'll see a change? Well, I'm actually not sure. These games are going to be played behind closed doors, right?
Yeah, there's not going to be any fans because I think the current restrictions limit the number of people who can kind of gather socially to, I think it's 10. So 10 people is obviously too many for a crowd, but they're kind of getting around the fact because you can have more people gathered if it's a workplace. So because the games are two professional teams playing each other, they've kind of got a bit of a loophole to say that the games are technically a workplace. So yeah, they'll be played behind closed doors. I think it's 10 weeks of games. It's pretty much the same teams that we saw at the start of the year. There's not really been much in the way of player movement. I think, Beauden Barrett's coming back. Well, he's going to start with the Blues because he had his sabbatical at the start of the year. Everybody's had an enforced sabbatical recently. So, it'll be interesting to see what kind of form he is in. Sam Whitelock has come back from Japan, so he's going to play for the Crusaders. But some of the other guys coming back from Japan, like Brodie Retallick, he's decided, I'm not going to play. I'm just going to have a rest. So, yeah, I mean, we're all hoping it's going to be pretty intense. Everybody likes watching the derby games, right? Your local rivalries. It is going to be bizarre having no crowd there. I'm not sure if they're going to play like fake crowd noise over the speakers to kind of get a fake atmosphere going on, or if we're going to hear the players swearing at each other because there's no audio to drown that out. It's going to be an interesting one. But, I mean, like you said, I think we're all just happy to get the guys back on the field. And I'm sure they want to be back on the field as well. The broadcasters need the games to make the money. So I guess it's a good news story if they can get up and running.
Yeah. Well, I must say, you've mentioned some players that are coming back. Brodie not playing. But, I mean, the last 2 days it's been quite a lot in the news with Milner Skudder and Julian Sevilla. All those guys coming back and they're actually going to play. I mean, that's I think that's really going to be crowd pullers, even though there's going to be no crowds. But I think it's just going to set up things. Being able to watch the games is going to be great. But I think it's going to make the hunger hopefully grow, and saying, but I want to be at the game. I don't want to. I'm not enjoying this sitting at home kind of thing where. Maybe at the moment, like you said, the stadiums are empty, and that's kind of the narrative at the moment, that it's easier to sit at home. But with all this, starvation that we've had from not being able to watch any rugby, and now suddenly you can watch rugby, but now you can't attend it. Hopefully, it just makes the hunger grow more, and it just adds to that whole thing of getting people back in the stadiums. But the secret is not getting people back in the stadiums; it's to getting them to stay. And that's the thing. I think it's going to be pointless the day they say, okay, the gates are open again and everybody can come back, and you have, but let's say 1, 2 or 3 weeks of great attendances, and then everything just siphons down again to almost nothing. It will be quite sad. So hopefully the guys will be looking at ways to keep the crowds in, because I mean, I think the game needs it. And like you say, the international games is one thing, but it's our main, our main source of rugby is in the local stuff, and that's where we need it. I mean, remembering days where Loftus we were packed to the rafters with a derby with Western Province playing the Bulls or Stormers or Sharks or whatever the case may be. And nowadays, it almost feels like friends and family only. It's not cool. So yeah, let's hope for the best. But anyway, Mark, geez, thanks for your time. I really, really appreciate it, and it's been great being able to sit down and chat with you a little bit, and just getting to know you. And hopefully one day when all this nonsense is over and done with, then I spoke to you a few years ago, or whenever it was, quite a while ago, and I said, please, if ever you can come to South Africa, please let me know. I'd be happy to have you come visit, set you up. You guys can stay over here. We in Joburg, because you've got to come and see our whole country. We've got a magnificent country here in South Africa. And but please, if you do come around, let me know. I think we've got so many invites already. You don't have to worry about accommodation if ever you come to South Africa. And I mean, keep up the good work. I think what you're doing is great, and it makes, especially in these times, I think everybody's so hungry for anything rugby that they enjoy. Guys like you that do what you do, and I mean, all the ideas that you come up with and stuff. It just helps keeping sanity. So, but thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, man, thanks for having me on. I've seen some of the other people you've had on, so I felt kind of honored, I guess, to join some of their ranks on your show. And yeah, like you say, I would definitely love to get over to South Africa. Still trying to convince the wife. She's got other places she wants to go, but if I guess, work on it for a little bit and try to find some other selling points aside from the rugby, which is probably not going to work on her. But if I can find some other things, then yeah, we should be able to make our way over.
If she's got an interest in food, then South Africa is like a no-brainer. You got to come. I mean, there's so many cultures in this country. There's nowhere in the world you can go to where you'll find as many cultures as South Africa. And I mean, you can just imagine the different kinds of foods and stuff you can get here. But yeah, work on it. And if you need some extra motivation, just get her on the show and we'll all talk to her.
Okay, man. Sounds like a plan.
Anyway, stay well, Mark, and look after yourself and your family. And we'll chat soon again, man. Stay safe.
Cheers, man. Talk to you again soon.